Time to welcome back to the studio Chris Meyer from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. Chris, welcome back, man. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm great. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing very well. So we were supposed to have you on last week.
That's right.
But you left it all on the field the previous Saturday.
I did my part. I had no voice. I think most of our listeners can understand.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm with you. I'm with you, and I
Totally
appreciate the effort. Absolutely. Did you rush the field?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. Come on now.
No. What? It wouldn't be uncalled for. It would not be uncalled for. So, it actually worked out to our benefit that you had to push back because it put you back to back with Michael from the Baton Rouge Area Chamber talking about the recent canvas trip to Greenville, South Carolina. Now, we're going to dive into a whole lot more than just that, but you were on the trip. Can we start there?
Yeah, sure.
What were your takeaways?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think, number one is, as you heard Michael say, I think the idea of public-private partnerships and really pulling together, not just relying on one sector like the government to get things done. I think you saw a history where the civic sector, private businesses, and the government sector came together to have priorities that they focused on over a long period of time, and they got it done. I mean, sort of the basic blocking and tackling was something that really was shining through. I think the other part for me is that you saw a story where the entire community was involved. And, we often talk about a divide here in this community, North versus South. And I think there you saw lines being blurred, being broken down in very sort of both symbolic, but also significant and meaningful ways. And so I think there's a lot of lessons we came off the trip on just from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation that we're excited to roll up our sleeves and row together with partners at the chamber, with the city government, et cetera.
Are there benefits towards, and when you talk about public-private partnerships, or
Yeah.
P3s as they're being called these days, I guess they all three words, public-private partnership. When you talk about those, though, are there benefits to just full-on privatizing different sectors or services?
I think there can be, but I think typically, in the case of the downtown model that we saw in Greenville, you had the city, for example, buy all the parking lots downtown and turn them over then to developers. And so here was the city leaning in saying, look, we'll control the dirt. We'll make sure that things are being designed in a way that works for everyone, but we're going to partner with folks who can get a return, who are going to privately do something that the government certainly cannot do. But we're going to deliver a result for our citizens that is much better than was there before. And so this is where I think we can be much smarter about the tools in our toolbox, particularly in leveraging government assets. I mean, you think about this city, Breck is the biggest property owner in the city. Corey Wilson was on that trip and is a huge advocate of these kind of things. The school system, another huge owner of public lands and assets. How do we lever those things? And I think you'll even hear from Cito Narcisse that he's got some ideas on how to better use the land and the buildings that are in his portfolio.
Okay. Talking with Chris Meyer from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. So there's a little bit about Greenville or the trip to Greenville, but I've got you on here to talk numbers.
Yeah.
City stats. And there is a perception of where we are right now versus the numbers of where we are right now.
So we've been doing BR City Stats for the last 15 years as a foundation, and really this measures both how people perceive Baton Rouge to be going. Are we going right direction or wrong direction? And we back it up with some basic facts. And unfortunately, Brian, I mean, this year we have seen a new sort of record in the number of people that think we're going in the wrong direction. We also startlingly have 52% of parents saying they don't want their kids to live here when they become adults.
Interesting.
And that, to me, if there's any warning sign, if there's any sort of stop, do not pass go moment, it's that. When a majority of your parents are saying, I don't want my kids to be here when they're adults, that's a problem, and we all need to wake up and address that.
Okay, how do we address it, though?
Yeah,
I mean, these are huge questions. It's a lot more than just one segment. How do you address that?
It is, but I think you've already named the issues, and I think we have to sort of operate in the spirit that we were talking about in the last segment. So look, the top three issues, and I don't need to tell your listeners this. Number one is crime.
Yes, it is.
Number two is schools, and number three comes down to traffic. Litter's close behind. These are issues that have been talked about in this community for years, and I think instead of having kind of one segment come up with a solution, we actually need partnerships that focus on real meaningful goals and reduce those things together. So when we talk about crime, for example, just having the public safety officials addressed on the back end is not enough. We have to have a much more comprehensive solution. And I'm actually much more optimistic by some of the plans coming together with different business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and public safety officials to address these things. I think what you really see in this year's city stats is that folks do not believe that the solutions to our problems are going to come from the government. I think they believe they're going to come from nonprofits. They think they're going to come from businesses or faith institutions. And so this is something we know as a community. When we've put our mind to things, we can solve them. But there is a very big red flashing light in front of us that we need to do something different.
Okay. So now we are going to get into the either or scenario, because as long as every time a problem comes up, it feels like there's another millage tacked onto my property tax. Is there going to be a point where we say, let's focus on the nonprofit, focus on the citizen-driven, focus on the faith-based, focus on the business to lessen the burden on our government? And how do we inspire that sort of leadership to say, okay, yes, it is my problem?
Yeah. I mean, again, I saw this on the trip to Greenville. You had leaders all across this community that came together and said, we want to be different. We want to be better. How do we create the best version of Baton Rouge? At the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, we've been in existence for 60 years, and I've been there now about 10 months. And part of what we have done is we are very data-driven by Baton Rouge City Stats. We also want to begin to bring ideas and solutions, bring people together. That's one of the things we've been best at in our history, is bringing sort of different perspectives together to focus on problems and then create solutions that can be sustained. I get it. If you're the mayor, if you're the council, you have very short-term windows through which you can create action. But I think the nonprofit sector, business leaders, we have the ability to sort of work together on these long-range plans and get it done. And we've got examples of that in the past. But I think right now there's a new sense of heightened urgency required by all of us to solve these problems. And they are solvable because we've seen other communities do them.
Okay. Crime being number one.
Yeah.
Okay. Short of me putting on a costume and fighting crime at night, how can regular citizens fight crime?
Yeah, please don't do that.
Too late.
So I think it's an and, right? I mean, we obviously, and I think you've heard this from our law enforcement, officials, we need some new tools and techniques to fight crime right now. We know a lot of the solutions, and you've got what seems to me of our law enforcement officials singing from the same hymnal about what to do. You also, though, have to begin to invest in the long-term strategies that reduce the root causes of crime. That was my background. I came from the education world, where I was a former teacher and then worked to grow high-quality schools in this city. I think we are going to see a difference in that. But right now, we have to tackle truancy. I heard stats that at some of our high schools in the city, over 40% of kids are rated as truant. That means they've missed more than 5 consecutive days of school. 40%. So again, it's going to require all of us. That's not pointing fingers. We have to have a much more comprehensive solution, because crime and violent crime is being committed now by much younger students, much younger children, and that's something we need to nip in the bud right away.
Now, that's something that we can't take away from the government for, though. That's not an either or. That's got to be, our tax dollars go to pay for our police force.
That's right. But you also, in city stats, we saw 2/3 of respondents, and this is a survey done by LSU of residents across Baton Rouge, say they have no agency. They don't feel like they know how to solve the problem. I think one of the things we've got to help citizens do is know how they can get in the game and help solve some of these problems. So, for example, yes, you pay your taxes. You expect law enforcement to do their job. We also, though, have nonprofits, faith-based organizations working in communities that we need to highlight where there are gaps, where there are places that there are no services for kids when they get out of school. Between the hours of 3 and 10, what are they doing? And so I think those kind of conversations that we can bring people together and start creating opportunities that people can donate, people can volunteer their time, they can mentor. You've got some great examples out there, like the 100 Black Men that recently won a big grant to significantly increase mentoring in our schools. How do we shine a light on that and do more of it? Because it's going to take the and strategy on issues like that.
No, it absolutely is. And the flip side of that is the majority of the violent crime in Baton Rouge is based off of drugs, drug deal gone bad, that sort of thing. So there's also got to be an equal emphasis put on the demand side. Reducing addiction in Baton Rouge would go a long, long way towards reducing the amount of, reduce demand, you reduce supply. Like you reduce the need for it.
And that's right. And look, we as a community have started to address pieces of that. I mean, the Bridge Center for Hope, for example, that we came together a few years ago in partnership with others at the Baton Rouge Area Foundation to create that center that now we are helping take people off the streets that are dealing with addiction issues and get them treatment before they're just put into jail and they keep repeating the cycle that doesn't actually help.
Right.
We're all for removing violent criminals from our streets, but we also got to intervene, to your point, much earlier to stop even the demand side of this.
Yeah, and it's going to take a whole lot. We got less than 2 minutes left in the segment. Give me 2 or 3 other numbers that really stand out to you right now with our city stats.
Yeah, well, let me tell you the one that maybe is the glass half full.
Okay.
All right, 70% of people think we're moving too slow. And I will say that's glass half full because I believe people want meaningful change now. And again, they believe change is going to come from nonprofits, from businesses, in partnership with the government sector. But we're not looking to the government to solve our problems. Heck, in Louisiana, we never have. When we've created change, it's been from grassroots and people coming together. And I think that's really what gives me a lot of hope is that folks want to see change. They want to see it faster, and they're looking to leaders at the chamber, at the foundation, other nonprofits to help bring these solutions and bring people together. And so that's exactly what I'm fired up to help do.
As a lifelong conservative, the idea that my destiny is in my own hands and not the government is an appealing idea to me. The next part is how do you avoid – oh, forgive me for this. How do you avoid the idea that the grass is always Greenville on the other side?
You've been working on that all morning, haven't you?
No, it just popped in my head. That's why I apologize.
We've seen other communities with fewer assets and natural sort of connections than we have.
Mm-hmm.
I think what people are so jealous of about Baton Rouge is our culture of family, of faith, of coming together. That is the other thing in city stats that really stands out. What people love most about this place is when we come together and we celebrate. So let's build on that.
Like we did against Alabama. In the meanwhile, this is the first of many conversations. He's Chris Meyer from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. I appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, Brian.
Let's check